Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to Merricks Garage. We're up at Easter Jeep Safari, full-size invasion up in Moab 2019, and I'm in the middle of nowhere with Stephen Watson and his convertible K30. I'm sure you guys know this truck. This is it's a goal for a lot of us. Off-road design makes a ton of awesome stuff. We're gonna go through this truck. I'll give you a walkthrough, and then we're gonna pull Steven in here and have him highlight some of his favorite things on the truck and inspiration for it and stuff like that. What did you think?
That was so much fun.
I love trucks. Hey, so I'm here with Stephen Watson of Off-Road Design. That's kind of hard to say. You need to change your name.
You get used to it.
So Stephen has forgotten more about these trucks than I will ever know. And we could have a 40-hour video if he started telling us everything about these. But truly, truly, truly a great resource. If you guys have ever called up to Off-Road Design and talked to him, you know what I'm talking about. So we're gonna go through this truck real quick. We're gonna get the top-down specs on it, and then yeah, I'd like to see what Stephen considers some of his favorite parts of this truck, and maybe some future plans, what he has coming up with it, and then we'll poke around my truck, and he can point out all the areas I screwed up. So what year is this?
That's a pretty good question.
It's a square body year.
It's a couple of pieces. It's got pieces of an 81 and pieces of an 85, both K30s.
Yep.
And really it's only the frame and the cab. You know, everything else we built up. So the engine is it's an L92.
Let's pop the hood.
That's more complicated than you think. You gotta get the proper hood.
Hey, your engine's not back there.
Yeah, but that hood's not a lightweight.
Is that what?
See, that hood's not lightweight.
Oh.
And you want to have this.
Oh, is that a new product coming out?
Yeah. This one is.
Yeah. We're gonna powder coat it.
The wood stick or the PVC.
Well, I think we need to powder coat this and give it a scary name.
Now we're gonna paint it tan so it matches.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm thinking of for the sales to the Orange County crew. If you powder coated this and charge like $200 for it,
then it'd be set.
Okay, so
this is an L92, which is the 08-ish Escalade all aluminum engine that is really basically a truck LS3. And we got this through Tilden Motorsports, and they put one of their Ultra 4 cam packages in it.
Ooh.
So it's 475 horse probably.
I thought I heard a cam. It had a little warble to it.
Yeah, so it's a reasonably hot engine. I mean, by today's standards, it's not like it has a supercharger that I want to put on it, but it
you
goes
do want to
pretty
put a
good.
supercharger on it?
I think it'd be super fun.
I've considered it. I've considered it with mine.
So we, like I say, Tilden put the cam in it, sent it to us. You know, basically we bolted it in and everything's set. You know, a few goodies on this. We've got the air intake running inside, which is okay for dust, but where it's really good is at anything where we've got mud and water involved. The air filter being up in the under the dash keeps it all clean is the biggest thing, so we don't tear that up. You know, otherwise there's a lot of K30. You know, we've got the Hydro Boost unit over there, is all stock stuff. You know, relatively stock position for the rest of the goodies here.
Yeah, it fits. You have quite a bit of room.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm quite a bit tighter. I wonder what that's from.
Probably fender liners.
Oh, for sure.
is a big part of it.
Well, so one of the things you mentioned about these that it's compared to, I mean, I love the small block engine, but these guys nowadays, you don't really need to do much to them to get crazy power out of them.
Well, your stock 6-liter is a 330, 340 horse engine.
That'll do that really all day long for 20 years.
Oh, and be smooth on the bottom and have plenty of power on top.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it is a whole different engine package than when we were trying to retrofit throttle bodies to carbureted engines. It's a whole different world.
Yep. So is this where you designed the 4-link system, or was this where you perfected the 4-link system?
No, this is actually just, this is off the shelf.
Okay. So this was just, I'm going to put my shop kit on this.
Yeah, this one is all off the shelf stuff. We've worked through learning on a bunch of different vehicles.
Yep.
And really my 88 Suburban was where we did the first 4-link, and then kind of evolved everything from there. But yeah, this one is basically production, other than the changes we talked about a little bit with the front bracketry.
Now, where did you, so in coming up with, I mean, I know people get all wrapped around the axle with angles and link lengths and things like that. In building it, was there like a middle ground that you were shooting for? I mean, because you got the rock bouncer style, you've got like the pre-runner style. Where did you want to land?
The biggest thing that we fight is we specifically laid it out as a 4-link because we didn't want to get inside the frame rails, because that's drivetrain territory.
Yep.
The headers go there. We didn't want to make people have to change exhaust or run specific systems. And there's such a variety of powertrains you can run in here. I mean, this is one of them, but we've got everything from a Cummins to LS3s and on and on. So we wanted to leave the inside of the frame rails alone.
Yep.
You know, that's
appreciated
sacred space. So that brings you to the 4-link. And with the 4-link, really keeping the links flat is ideal.
Yeah.
And then it's trade-offs from there for ground clearance. And that's where we have 5 different bracket sets now, where we step that gradient up and down depending a little on what the customer is doing, how high the truck's going to be, trying to keep the links flat to keep them driving nice.
Yep.
And really, one of the things that we've learned even on IFS stuff is if you want to really know how a vehicle drives, drive it with no sway bars. If it drives okay,
I've done that.
If it drives okay and you just want sway bars for body roll control, then you're doing good. You've got good geometry.
That right there. This is one of the things that I stressed about. I mean, I was running calculators on my angles before I even started melting metal. And I kept on calling up, and Stephen was just like, the brackets do a lot of the work. Stick around these link lengths. But I that was one of my major concerns, was I was going to do all this work and I was going to end up with a truck that was going to wallow, it was going to just squat, or it just was not going to ride the way I wanted it to. And I remember the first time I drove it, no sway bars around the block. And even then I was just like, oh, this is night and day.
Yeah.
It's and like you said, I was confident at that point, like, okay, if it rides well without a sway bar is just going to be polishing it.
Yeah, it's there for body roll control, because we built stuff that the truck realistically tried to kill you. And I see stuff like that out here, you know, and knowing what I had and what it felt like and seeing other vehicles set up like that.
Scary.
There's some scary stuff.
Yeah.
And the sway bar.
You just have a rear?
Yeah.
That's what I've got. Yeah. Are you going to do a front?
I'd like to play around with it.
Yeah.
I think
I'd like
balanced
to also.
light bars front and rear is the way to go. It's just, it's harder to work it into the front.
Yeah, the rear did go in nicely, and it made a huge difference.
Yeah.
So okay, so let's move inside. So we've got 4L80.
Nope. Next thing here is a Turbo 400.
Turbo 400.
That was actually built by Rancho Drivetrain, who they're famous for building super high-end desert stuff. And we kind of talked them into doing a lower-end transmission for this that was still a lot more than we planned on doing. But it is a dreamy transmission, to use a teenager term there. But it is amazing. The valve body is beautiful. The transmission drives exactly how you want it all the time, regardless of what gear we're in. I mean,
What's your
is
cruise?
amazing.
What are you cruising at?
RPM wise?
Yeah.
3,000-ish.
Okay. Okay.
You know, it's got 488 gears and 40s.
Yep.
So. Yeah,
And no overdrive, or do you have
no overdrive.
Okay. Yeah.
Straight turbo 400.
Have you ever thought about putting like a gear vendor in it or something? Well, I guess you can trail it.
Yeah, and it doesn't go down the freeway a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it's
that's
built
the
to do
consideration I've got for mine.
We have done it, and it works okay. It's just really loud when you're running 80 down the highway, but it does it. We've done it for hours on end. We've done it thousands and thousands of miles, and we really wanted to stay away from the 4L80 just for extra weight, length, and complexity. So the Turbo 400 is super simple, you know, full manual valve body. There's nothing to hook up on it, no controls externally on it. Yeah, I got a shifter and a gas pedal.
This brings up another good point. One of the things that the feedback I get, not from usually from people just coming in and going out from my channel, is, why didn't you do a 4L80? Why didn't you do this? And there's a place and time for overbuilding stuff. I have a 4L65. Everyone told me that thing was going to explode. It's been fantastic. Now,
well, I
it may
have a
explode
700 R4 in my Blazer still with a 504
Exactly.
big block.
Exactly.
And I can't drive it like I can drive this truck.
But you can still get
beefier
around with
stuff, but it works. You know, it
And I
gets
think
around.
that's the point, is that I want people to recognize, like, you don't need to jump in, and it doesn't have to be everything. Like, if you've got a small block Chevy and a 700 R4,
That's one of my biggest
What
pet
do you need?
peeves, like with this place. People.
we
talk
talking
to
about
people-
Moab.
Yeah, now we're kind
and
of
the Easter
starting
Jeep
to go on a
Safari and their
side
wine
subject, and
tasting.
you can edit this, but
Oh no,
Yeah.
this is where it gets good.
I talk to people all the time that, oh yeah, I want to get that other locker, you know, get my front locker in, and then I'll be ready to go to Moab. You know, I'm going to do this and do that, and then I'll be ready to go. And people come down here in cars and have a good time.
Or
There's roads
dually
for
daily
everybody.
drivers.
You can just get out and use what you have.
Yes.
And what you do with it will tell you what you need to do next, and then work that direction, trying to build everything zero to hero from scratch. Well, for one thing, it's hard to get the vehicle done.
Well, and you
without
never really
having
know
that
what the
intermediate
requirements are.
satisfaction. Well, and you don't know how to drive it when you get there.
Or
And
fix it.
or fix it.
So I mean,
a big deal.
that's the JKs, JLs have kind of brought a whole new element to the off-road industry, and the fact that you can buy one that's pretty well set up and dialed.
By a ridiculous amount of ability.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's stunning what those things can do. Now, this is a completely different. This is more of, it's almost apples and oranges, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, takeaway point: you don't need to be getting custom transmissions and 4-link suspensions. I've mentioned this in my channel many, many times. I've had this since high school. I drove it in pretty much stock form. I had a 3-inch lift and 33s, and that's how I drove it for probably 15 years.
The most useful iteration of my Blazer was on 35 to 37 inch tires when it was a full body. I had a soft top. I love that. And I used it more because I drove it all the time.
Yep.
And
Now,
you
this is
end up
great, but this is
thinking
like
more specialized.
well, it's a sniper
When it's
rifle as
30
opposed
degrees
to a,
and outside, I don't want to drive it to work.
yeah.
You know, it's not going home with me at night because of that. So it just gets more specialized, and it's great. But you know, there are a lot of other iterations that work real well too.
Takeaway point: just get out and take your truck wheeling, or heck, just go camping in it. Just go do something.
use it.
Go do something. Okay, so you got all these
look great.
bypasses.
Yeah, so we we built the truck around just a coilover package, single 2.5-inch coilover, and then kind of wanted to step up the damping and and show there's some extra ability in the whole system. So we switched everything up, went to a coilover and bypass, and it's everything that we hoped. You can drive it a whole lot harder, specifically on one wheel hits, because the bypass
Did you
works.
tune them yourself?
These are off the shelf. We've done, other than setting up spring rates, I haven't touched a tube on them.
That's
And not that there's not giant gains to be made, but they work really well out of the box.
yeah. These guys know what they're.
Well, we got these through Fox. This is actually very similar to a package that you would find on a 4500 Ultra 4 car, both as far as wheel travel and the actual shock package. So it's not, I imagine what's in here is what you would find on a heavy 4500 car, and it's not real hard for them to figure that out.
You did space them out. Now, was that for clearance, spacing out?
Wheel spacers?
Yeah.
It's nice having the rear wheels outside the fenders, is really what it comes down to, from nerfing off of rocks and trees.
Yeah. I'm considering mine are tucked right now, which is nice. But yes, what Steven's referring to is having the extra width in the tire. It's a little bit of track stability, but the biggest thing is it's going to keep your body off the rocks. You've got that tire that's just going to nudge you a little bit, and even if it's just an inch or two,
yeah, it keeps
it makes a
out of
difference.
The quarter panels. And this truck, one of the things we really wanted to hold on to is we've built narrowed stuff and buggies with skins, and we really wanted to keep this a square. So the front is not tapered, it's not chopped,
No
it's
bob
a
to it.
full square, full size hood, real fenders, and the bed is.
It's a recognizable.
Yeah, it's exactly.
My son would recognize it as a square body.
It's a square body truck, and the bed is actually full width also. We fabricated the bed at kind of a regular cab width, like you would have for a bed. So it's armored up and you can drag it, so that helps a lot, but still having the extra track width is nice.
So basic 14 bolt 488s Detroit locker.
Yeah, so the rear end, well, we can get back up into the transfer case.
We're going there.
So moving back from the transmission, the transfer case is our Magnum system, and this one we're actually using a left-hand 205 for
your Ford high
more
pinion.
of the well, a lot of times if you have real brand purists, it's better to call them a left-hand new process 205. I don't care.
I like to punch those
truck.
guys in the face.
Yeah, we like to thank the Ford guys for using all these cool left-hand parts and then rotting away so we can take them over. It's all in good fun. But the high pinion fronts are really nice.
Yes.
They've got a little bit stronger gear set.
Yep.
And with the high pinion design, you can't get into the front drive shaft, so it's a lot more protected from trail obstacles. So anyway, Magnum underdrive unit in front of a Ford 205.
So let's break that down for my listeners out there. So standard transfer case comes out of you've got your transmission, you got an adapter, then you got your transfer case. Your transfer case is what basically, if you leave it just straight pass through, it's going to come out your drive shaft and straight down to the rear wheels. Or you can have 4 high and 4 low.
It's a planetary reduction box, and you got to be careful. It doesn't completely replace the adapter, but you generally end up using shoulder adapters.
Oh,
so
okay.
it ends up in front of the 205, and it kind of integrates in. And the big deal there, and the reason it's called the Magnum, is normally when you have one of these underdrive units, it feeds out through a 32 spline shaft or something similar to that into the transfer case.
Yep.
Well, and with the Magnum, we built a new input gear for the transfer case that's a 1 3/4 inch shaft.
This is a Dana 60. It is the Ford iteration of the Dana 60. So driver's side. By having a high pinion, there's a couple of reasons why people want the high pinion. You get a stronger ring gear because you can basically add more support to your pinion because you've got more meat to it, right?
Well, you're driving off of the
top of it.
You're driving off of the other side of the gear, off of the stronger side of the gear, because a gear tooth has different angles to it. And if you're pushing on the slopey side, it's trying to push everything apart more. you're not pushing directly against the
yeah.
tooth. You know, if you're pushing on the steeper side, you're getting more push and less
Deflection.
trying to deflect off, less pressure trying to blow the pinion away from the ring gear.
This is pure. We're getting way into the weeds here, but it's essentially when you start diving into Dana 60s, and people like the Kingpin because it doesn't have any ball joints to go bad. It's really simple and heavy duty. People like the high pinions because of the strength and also drive shaft protection. But once again, just run what you got. But anyway,
yeah, so steering wise, this is all of our normal crossover steering stuff. It works, you know, it's all built to work in with the coilover system. And then we've got the PSC hydro assist, and really the magic here is that we've dialed everything in with the assist kit to maximize the turning. So it's a custom stroke cylinder that actually strokes a good bit longer than what most assist kits run.
how many inches?
This one is 8 7/8 stroke.
Mine is only 8 inches.
And that's the problem, is the standard 8-inch stroke cylinder,
It
really
maxes
doesn't even
out.
get to,
Yeah.
you can get more. So we had to do some U-joint clearance, and this turns far enough that the backside of the knuckle actually starts getting into the U-joint by just a tiny bit.
That's
But you get a lot of steering angle, and it's, you know, it's nice for maneuverability.
yep. Air locker.
Yeah, we've got air lockers front and back, which is really cool for maneuverability.
Oh, you do it. So you don't have a Detroit in the back. You do have an air in the back.
It is an air locker in the back.
Oh, cool.
And the big thing with that is, once again, for turning, what we discovered, you know, everybody had Detroits for years.
Yep.
You know, now we're getting the locker history, but, you know, the Detroit was the thing. And in about 2005, ARB finally came out with an air locker for the 14 bolt. We started playing around with them, and all the Cone Dodger rock crawling competition guys had found that the locker or a spool in the back actually pushes the vehicle. So when you try to steer, the rear end is pushing.
Oh yeah.
And pushes
it.
the front. And when you run an air locker in the back,
You can turn that off.
you can turn that off, and it makes them steer a lot better. So we've actually come down there. We've got kind of different modes that we run. And like when we were racing King of the Hammers, we found this. When we were out in the open, the front diff is open,
Yep.
and the rear is spooled up, and that way
You just push it hard.
anytime that you bike the car, you've always got tires spinning, you know, or being driven. But when we get into rubbly, like gulch bottom trails, you open up the rear diff and lock the front, and that way both tires are always climbing. You know, when they come up on something, they'll climb up over it instead of just running into it. But then the rear is not pushing you around; it'll follow. But it's not pushing.
Yes. Yes.
So,
I mean, I love my Detroit, and it's bulletproof, reliable. They've worked forever.
You don't have to have plumbing to run them.
Nope.
You know, they're cheap,
self-enclosed.
relatively speaking.
They're super strong. But you do notice, especially like if you're trying to do a tight switchback. I mean, I have a e-locker up front, so I can flip that off. But the rear, I mean, once it's locked and you've got that thing loaded, it's not going to unlock anytime soon.
They just keep pushing. They do their job.
Yeah, they do exactly what they're supposed to do. So yeah, so you've got this is why I wanted to see this guy up person. I've spent hours staring at this truck in pictures, but I knew there was going to be a lot of cool little details that
it's the stuff you pick up doing it for years.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
We've played around with all the toys, and that's really one of the things that we're pretty good at when we start wheeling with smaller vehicles. You know, we go out with the Jeep guys. It's not you got to have all of the tools in place to be able to get around better.
Yeah.
And so this truck has all the tools, and it's basically a rock buggy with a body on it, you know, built into a square with all the cool features, and it helps it get around. And that's something a lot of people comment on, is the truck drives a lot smaller than it is. You know, it acts small, and
Because it's every bit of it is for performance.
All the pieces are tuned in.
Very, very, very cool. Well, hey, it's time to embarrass myself. I'm gonna show Steven what I done did in my driveway. And hopefully he doesn't have many negative things to say. So you guys know my truck. Well, if you don't, you should, because I've put plenty of videos up on it. But I've got the man here. Dude, he just threw a rock. Do it again, Rye. He can't do it twice. My son just threw a rock and hit that thing he was aiming for. I'm pretty proud of that. Okay, so yeah, I'm just gonna blast through. I'm gonna give him a quick dial walkthrough of what I've done. Yeah, so starting off, I mean, you know, it's the LQ9. Here, we'll pop. Oh. You gotta do the Chevy bump to get mine open.
Pretty standard.
Yeah. Where do I? So how do I get on the Kickstarter for this awesome anodized pole?
Well, you start down at the hardware store with PVC. Start at the beginning and work your way up.
I'm not ready for the aluminum pole yet.
Right. Maybe a piece of wood. If you want to go really basic, you can just use a piece of wood and then work your way to PVC and eventually a piece of tubing.
Well, my latches haven't gone out yet, but this broke on me, so webbing to the rescue.
Yeah, that's hanging in there.
Yeah, it's
literally hanging.
Yeah, literally. But yeah, LQ9. I guess I put a crossbar up front between the two towers, so that's why mine is looking tighter than yours, right. I think. The reinforcements from I was concerned when I did this about the force that was going to be up on the shock towers, collapsing them in.
Right, and that's the big key for the crossbar.
Yep. Hindsight being 2020, I would have liked to move these underneath, so I didn't have as much. You can see it on that one. I want them underneath, but
yeah, that's one of the tricks that we've learned, and you know, and we're refining all the stuff through the instructions and you know, trying to get more info. But that's where if you've got the tube on top, it's a little bit less leverage on the mounts. You know, they can be a little bit simpler and everything is it can be a little bit cleaner. But I mean, on this side, you're already having to work your way around all the brake hoses. Yeah, so there's compromises on all of it.
So yeah, so basic, it's an LS. And then what were my challenges? Nothing really. I mean, I did not have to move my steering box. I was able to get to work. You can see just how close my pitman arm comes. I actually had to shave down the panhard bracket a little bit to get that to work. Oh, that got bent up on something. I like having the fenders in.
Oh, the fender liners are great. We've
rattle.
threatened to put
they drive me
something
crazy
in there for years, because in dusty stuff in the desert, it's not too bad. But as soon as you get into the mud and the wet, you end up with that crap all over the engine. And fortunately, these fly-by-wire engines are a little bit less susceptible to problems there. But I've ended up with throttles stuck wide open with sticks and mud jammed up in the linkage and all kinds of problems from not having inner fenders when we get in those conditions.
The factory way of mounting the inner fenders does not lend itself to making it very easy. So they are, as you can see, I've got some really, this is the new I think this is Genrite, their new high definition cabling. To try and pull my fender because that rattles. Yeah, but I mean, everything on this, you know, it just went pretty much standard. I didn't have to cut down on the length of the links too much. The front was a struggle. I mean, it was just, you know, it's
lots of cycling,
lots of work, lots of.
Well, that's what we tell people, is that it's going to link itself up really quick.
Oh yeah.
You know, getting the brackets on the axle, they basically put themselves on. It's super simple. Getting brackets placed on the frame's not too hard. Getting the panhard worked in isn't too big of a deal, but then that's where you start going through and cycling and having to set your link lengths and the panhard length. And
once you've put them all together, you've now got to make them move all at the same time without touching each other.
It's like framing a house. Everybody gets all excited when they see the bones of the house. And the real work is still.
One of the things that I didn't realize is I was able to push my links back as far as I wanted. I started the project, stupid, I know. I mean, I'm going to be welding brackets onto my frame, but I tried to anticipate anything that I was going to run into and build around it. Meaning, like, I didn't want to have to move my transmission cross member. And then I realized I'm four-linking the truck. Replace the cross member.
You got to keep the hierarchy in order.
Exactly.
You know, things like exhaust mods.
Yeah.
You know, you have to leave room for an exhaust pipe. You can't just use that up.
Yep.
But you can't let the suspension be dictated by things like where the exhaust pipes are, or a transmission or transfer case cross member.
And that's where the work comes in on this.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, you've done a lot of the thinking, but I was really surprised as I started with my front links up around here. Because you can see I removed this cross member, this body mount, because I thought that's where it was going to go. And I ended up a good 6 inches back, which worked out perfectly. Long, straight, flat links. And no, this little kicker you guys put in.
Right.
I'd love to see the bender you have that bent nose.
It's a nice bender.
Oh, man. So, and then obviously the rear, you know what I did here.
Yeah. Building a new frame section back there, you know the work involved, but what you end up out of it is a really rigid chassis.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
of course the other side of that is a lot of people get really concerned with making the chassis really stiff, you know, trying to actually stiffen the frame, when the roll cage is what makes it stiff. And that's something like
That's
truck.
all tied in.
We boxed a short section of frame under the windshield about like that, and it's not even like fully boxed because the exhaust pipes run through there, so it's only, you know, an inch in between the walls.
Yeah.
But we boxed that short section, and otherwise that's all C-channel frame.
But you've got a full
The cage is
exo.
tied into it everywhere.
Well, and that's my cage currently. Here, I'll show you inside here. My cage ties in right down here. I've welded it underneath. And then it also ties in here, but it's gonna get all the way up front. It's gonna get tied in too.
Right.
So this was something I was really stoked on, the fact that they didn't really take up that much space. I mean, you can see I didn't lose much.
Yeah, a lot of people get really concerned with coming through the floor for doing the coilovers, and it's not that big of a deal.
Nope.
Especially in a Blazer, you can pull them behind the seat without too much trouble.
Yep.
So keeping the factory back seat, you know, or even an aftermarket bench, whatever you want to put in there, isn't too big of a deal. And you know, you've got to build some sort of a box around them to keep it all totally closed off. But it isn't a huge deal.
No. Once I made the decision, you guys may remember from my videos when I mucked around with trying to get it under the floor forever. I was designing all these relocating brackets to hang off and hang up. Once I cut a hole in the floor, I was like, why didn't I just do this like 2 weeks ago?
And we've got some more options for keeping things under the floor now.
Yeah.
You know, we're coming out with some different shock mounts to be able to run different systems. And, you know, this is a long travel system.
Yes.
And we're working towards, well, not working towards, we're taking all of the stuff that we normally do and turning it into specific kits. One of them being daily driver tow rig kits.
Well,
and they're going to be shorter travel.
We don't need, I mean, this is
you don't
14
need
inches.
14, 16 inches of travel
No.
for a lot of vehicles. So, you know, shorter travel shock can still fit under the bed floor easily and still provide great ride quality and drivability. Actually, more so than we get with these even, because the spring rates come up and, you know, they don't move around quite as much. And you can have a great resto mod kit.
Yep. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest surprises that I had was, and I've tried to verbalize this, but it's kind of difficult, is the benefit of the ride in terms of off-roading was never in dispute. I mean, we knew that's why we did this. Driving it on the road, on the other hand, it's complete. The truck. Not that squares on leaf springs wander, but they tend to.
Well, the handling is vague. It's
you
not
navigate.
always the
You
same.
encourage the steering. You don't really have a direct decision in the steering. The truck's going to decide where it's going to go.
These get really precise.
Yes.
You know, you don't. Well, when you have leaf springs locating the axle, they're fuzzy. You know, the axle is going to be in a
Certain
range
plane, yeah.
of positions. When you have a panhard bar and links locating the axle, it is where it is.
Your track is set.
And it's the same every time.
Yeah.
And that's something that we really do try to emphasize, is that, you know, and especially like a daily driver tow rig kit, is they're not geared towards off-road. They're geared toward making the truck drive really nice.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, this thing just did 1,000 miles here, no sweat.
Right.
And
you take a, you know, somebody wants to build, well, Dave Hellman's Blazer. You know, it's not exactly a full-on restoration.
that's the white.
The white,
Very, very
74,
clean. Yep.
You know, really nice, clean Blazer, and he's running our leaf springs on it, and that all works pretty good. But something like that, you could do a coilover kit. It's going to make it drive beautifully,
Like a new
and
truck.
run around town.
Yeah.
And that, well, that's a really good comparison. Is there's a reason why Ford and Dodge have linked up coil spring front ends. Is
Yep.
because it works.
Yeah.
They drive really nice, and those trucks do drive nice.
What else do we have here that I can? Oh, I don't have a bash plate yet. I ran out of time, so I did put a good dent in my gas tank
right.
yesterday. So tomorrow, the high dive might be interesting. That's pretty much my only concern out here. I'm not sure if I think I'm lower than I was when I was leaf sprung, because my breakover angle definitely feels more predictable than it did with leaf springs. I'm terrified of rolling. I just, duh. I mean, I've done that.
Don't want to do it again.
Don't want to do that again. And so I don't like no one really does, but the off-camera stuff can be challenging. So I definitely feel a lot more planted than I did with the leafs. But my concern is bashing this guy.
Yeah, that gas tank's kind of vulnerable.
Yeah, it was on the list, and yeah, as you can see, I already ripped off my license plate, so I'm running no license plates right now. There's a lot of stuff to do on the back here, but yeah, this will eventually get boxed in.
Yeah, what I like to do is a drop tube off of the bumper, you know, just coming off of here, you know, and bringing a tube across right behind there.
Oh man.
And that way it's nice high clearance, you know, you come off of a strong point,
Yeah.
and you know, just comes back and protects this back corner.
Yep.
And then
I
could
could
plate it up from there.
Yep.
But really, you know, if you're protected across here, you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, this bumper was just to get me to Hammers, and yeah, and then doing the skid plate, the belly skid up front, was Friday evening before we left.
Right.
But yeah, the sway bar sleeves through the tube, sway bar clears. I didn't have to go up through the floor with that. And Speedway Engineering, they were great.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time on their website calculating and measuring and
Right.
and mocking it up and
Oh, I've done sway bar math. I've got several spreadsheets that calculate all kinds of different things about sway
I
bars.
disappeared down
and
a rabbit hole.
eventually you pick a bar, and you know, we've got really good educated guesses at this point.
And I think I ended up with kind of one that you had.
Yeah,
Led
I
me
think
to.
we Give you a recommendation for a
Yeah.
size, and worked out well.
I do need to do my springs. My rates seem possibly a little soft up front. In the rear, I mean, I'm getting into my bumps, but not all that much. So I've got the same rate front and rear.
Blazers balance out pretty well.
They do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's not out of the ballpark, and that's one of the things you talk about, bottoming out and getting into your bump stops in the same conversation as spring rates. The two are loosely related.
Yeah.
If you're bottoming out, most of the time that's the damper. You need stiffer valving in the damper. Spring rates, and there's, in the long travel truck world,
Yeah.
you hear the phrase, springs just hold the truck up and the dampers control everything else. And there's a little bit of room for some fuzziness, you know, with playing around with the dampers a little bit for body and pitch control.
So don't get too focused on my spring rate.
The springs basically hold it up.
And they're doing a good job of that. So maybe,
Yeah. You know, you can have it set up. You want to have a couple inches of preload on the spring pack when it's at full droop, and you can play games with the slider stops.
Yep.
And
I haven't
make
even
those
done any of
work.
that yet.
So there's a lot of little things that you can do with the springs, but in general, if you're bottoming the suspension, that's a damper problem.
Okay.
Actually, I
Good to know.
heard a story from a friend that knew a guy that was working on early desert and short course stuff, and they were talking about, you know, they were out testing some desert truck, and this is before good dampers existed, and they went around their test track. They had a bunch of whoops and a big jump, so they go over the whoops and everything feels good on the truck, and then they go over the jump and they bottom it out. It's like, okay, well, we have to stiffen up the springs. So they go back and they stiffen it up, and
they get
then
beat
it's
up in
getting
the
stiff over the whoops, and then they go over the jump and they still bottom out. So they stiffen it up again with the springs. And next thing you know, you can't drive it through the whoops, but it won't bottom out when you jump. And then they're like, wait a minute, you know, let's go back and do this the opposite way, put the soft springs back on and start. I'm sure they bolted on more shocks. You know, this was in the day that's the only thing you could do.
Do you remember that when people would put, like, your truck was more hardcore, the more Rancho shocks you had on it?
People still do that. But
dude, that guy has
that
8 shocks up, or dual steering stabilizers.
That's the dampers that we have on these two trucks. I mean, even the bypass package is a huge step up, but the dampers you have on this truck, Walker Evans would have killed to have these on his trucks in the 70s and 80s.
So
they were coming into pits, and they had quick release pins on their shocks so that they could replace them in the pit. Foxes, they have their ride control system that is factory, you know, is OEM on the Raptors now, and a lot of the Razors have it. So it's electronically controlled damping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There, what was the? I think Audi had one years ago that was magnets.
Yeah.
And you could stiffen it up with magnets. They had like
so the
something in the fluid.
Yeah, the fluid was.
That
I
was
forget the term
ingenious.
for it, but the fluid got stiffer when you ran it through a magnetic field, and so they could vary the magnetic field and change the stiffness of the damper.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Now we do it. I mean, that's one of the things I do like about the traditional coilover is when you go to tune it. Yeah, we're talking all crazy about, you know, magnetic fields in your hydraulic fluid. But the reality is when you tune these guys, you're just changing little shim stacks, which is just a little valve that allows a preset amount of fluid to go through or a preset amount of deflection.
They are really simple.
They're really simple.
Well, and there's all kinds of stuff trickling down. You know, that truck, we've got external bypasses on it.
Yep.
But both Fox and King have internal bypasses that are great for these trucks.
Packaging.
Because, you know, that having the extra stages of damping, you know, like with this, you essentially have 2 stages. You've got your coilover travel, you know, that acts the same through its whole travel, and then you have a bump stop, hydraulic bump stops. And so you've got, you know, one stage is from full droop until you hit the bump stop, and then the suspension gets stiffer before you bottom out. Well, a bypass shock has
more
zones. We should go take a look at this.
Yeah. One of the main differences you're going to see is bypasses versus no bypass.
So the magic is the external tubes in this case. And so you can imagine when the shock piston's down here and is traveling up, fluid can flow through these tubes around that shaft or around the piston. And it's metered by these valves. So you can control how much fluid is going through and how stiff it is. Well, when it gets up to here, now all of a sudden this tube is inactive. So all the fluid has to go through this tube. And then once you get past that one, now all of the fluid has to go through the piston. So you've got a couple things going on. One, these zones are defined by where the tubes are, and they're different zones in the shock. So it's soft, stiffer, and then stiffer again. And then the other thing is you can adjust each one of those zones externally. So you've got that adjustment being able to be factored in how you like it easily. So it can be tuned a whole lot easier without having to get inside the shock. And with a conventional coilover system, you have this doesn't have zones. It behaves the same all the way through the travel. And then you have a bump stop that gives you the last bottom out control. So this is a separate zone by itself. And then this is a zone. So, you know, like on your truck, you essentially have 2 zones to the suspension, and it's great having that bottom out control, but this just lets you make it progressively stiffer
Can you tune the reservoir on your main too, or does the tuning, like pressure tuning, happen up on the bypass?
gas pressure really isn't the thing you tune. You basically set gas pressure. There's not a whole lot you do with gas pressure on the shock reservoirs. You
just kind of set it and forget it.
You pretty much set it and forget it.
I'm showing my ignorance when it comes to
yeah, on a coilover system, and this is once again getting a lot deeper, but
we've gone from talking about we're covering everything here.
We can get fairly deep on the shocks. So when you're in a coilover, all of the fluid has to go through the piston. So you've got holes in the piston and little valves in there that deflect. So as you're driving that up, all this fluid's got to go through the piston, and the only thing that's making it do that is there's a hose right here that comes up. Actually, on this case, the reservoir is under here through the piggyback, but it's constantly trying to shove that fluid up. So you can imagine if you didn't have holes in the piston, it's going to just go up and shove all the fluid into the reservoir.
And the pressure just stops it from cavitating,
so the gas pressure is what forces the fluid to go through the piston. And that's why it's not really a tuning thing. You bring the gas pressure up until it's forcing the fluid through the piston and you're not creating a negative pressure area under the piston. But going over that gas pressure doesn't do any extra for you. Once it's not cavitating, it's just not cavitating.
And you don't need it. Yeah. So these are the high clearance.
Yeah, so this is our standard high clearance bracket, and this is actually the current generation where we change things around where you've got access to the jam nuts. That's one thing. Our brackets used to slope across here and it was just hard to get a wrench in there. But this distance that sits below the frame is kind of where it has to be to have a link arm in there.
Yep.
And then you end up with a slope normally up to the frame here, but it's got cross member piece in the middle.
Because I cut my truck in half.
Right. So with what you'll see when we go look at the K30 is that these brackets are basically flush with the bottom of the frame, but it's because the K30 frame is 2 inches deeper than a Blazer frame.
Yeah.
So we built the brackets in as if they were on a half ton, and then the K30 frame kind of just forms a frame extension in the middle.
Now, the K30 rear is different?
No, it's basically the same thing. The big difference that we'll see over there, though, is where this frame, I mean, you've put your new frame piece in, but the Blazer frame continued back and stayed relatively flat through this passenger area and then kicks up. Well, on the pickups, they kick up sooner. They kick up right behind the cab. So where this bracket sits, we have to extend the frame down. So we basically, you know, as if the frame was kicking up somewhere in here, we built a frame extension to keep it flat and keep these brackets down, you know, in the same relation. So this is the original K30 frame, this piece right here, and then we tapered it up, and that's where this is essentially an extension, bringing things down so that this bracket can sit in the same relationship to the front.
Oh, I got it. So
yeah,
up
like
in
the frame
here
was up here, and then we've got the bracket drop down here to make it where it would be on a regular, Blazer belly pan.
Yep. And then the fronts, these are the high clearance also. Oh, I see the difference.
Yeah, so this is where, I mean, we've even cleared some of this out on our own.
Just get to
so
it.
We can get to the jam nut. But you can see the bottom of the frame is more flush with the bottom of the bracket, and that's just because the K30 frame is deeper and we Frenched them up into it.
And you tied your transmission cross member to your engine cross member too.
Yeah, that's kind of our standard go-to design for a belly skid.
I like that.
Is keep the engine and the tranny pan safe.
Yeah, as you can see, tons of stuff to talk about. We should do this more often. We should do like a video chat where we do like an educational, like, let's talk about transfer cases.
Yeah, we can talk about there's all kinds of cool stuff. We obviously, when we do this all day every day for 20 plus years now,
you know quite a bit.
We can dive into all the pieces.
Yeah. So, well, dude, this was fun. I'm looking forward to wheeling with you tomorrow.
Yeah,
and
we'll get some action shots and show these things actually moving.
Yeah. Can you say Merricks Garage?
Merricks Garage.
Boom!
There it is.